Glaude Jr., and kind of rejects the premise, I think, of this whole conversation. This email says, bring the country together, give me a break. Who has incited more violence than Trump? Who made fun of Pelosi's elderly husband when he got his head bashed in? Who told his supporters to go to the Capitol and fight? Every single time Trump opens his mouth, he incites ugliness. Let me bring you back in the conversation, Christopher Nicholas, because I do think for a lot of folks, left of center, it is really, really hard to even entertain this question that we put out before the listeners today after January 6th specifically, that they see that as like a breaking point, that there is really no way to kind of, like Eddie said, treat this like a normal political debate. What do you say to that?
Well, I would point out what Trump himself has said. Since the shooting, he had said before that his speech as written prior to Saturday was a real humdinger, and now it has been rewritten to talk more about national unity. So I would say let's wait and see what he says on Thursday. Tonight, our general speeches at the convention, including Nikki Haley. Tomorrow, the vice presidential designee, J.D. Vance, would be set to give his speech, and then Thursday is Trump. So let's see what they say. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. That's one of the issues in this never-ending race to the bottom, is when people do perhaps try to break free from what they've been saying before, they are met with mockery and criticism.
Or cries of hypocrisy, as you've mentioned before. You flip-flopped. You said this in the past, and now you want me to believe you're unified.
Exactly. So let's wait and see. Both sides have been guilty of using incendiary language. I think President Biden apologized in an interview yesterday with NBC News for his phrasing a couple days before the horrific shooting, of saying that now it was time to put Trump in the bullseye, and that again is an example of what I use, what I say when politics just naturally gloms on to a lot of military type language.
And I want to push a little bit, because there is no proof that the shooter was incited by anything Democrats said. He could have, we don't know what his motivations were at all. He could have been hearing voices. We don't know, right? And I say this in a sense, are we overreacting, or at least jumping the gun and thinking that it was the Democratic strategy for attacking Trump that led to the shooting? Is it fair? And I say this because VP nominee J.D. Vance posted on social media blaming language that President Biden used in his campaign against the former president as one of the reasons why this happened. Have we jumped the gun, and is it disingenuous to sort of say and blame Democrats for it?
I don't see any evidence that anyone is to blame for this besides the young man himself. When you read stories now a couple days past the incident, you kind of see a trend of rising exasperation with our law enforcement folks, because they have not yet found anything that leads them to say, oh, this is why he did it. I think in today's day and age, we all think that every person who does this, somewhere in their file folder is their 18-page manifesto, handwritten, single-spaced, all that sort of stuff. And so far with this person out there in Butler, we haven't seen that, and we may never see it.
Yeah.
So I think we can work to be better, regardless of if we ever can exactly determine why he did this.
Right. And, we in the media should not escape scrutiny in this conversation. And some people have been writing in about us. Matt says, rebalance politics, bring back the fairness doctrine in radio and television. That's sort of the equal amount of airtime for each side type of idea. Then Douglas in Cinnamonton, New Jersey says, the media is responsible for the lack of unity in our country. The media does not act as honest brokers and assist to create and exploit fissures in our society. And Douglas goes on to note that Douglas listens to NPR, VTAP, CNN, Fox, Breaking Points, all types of news outlets, and sees the same thing in all of those spaces. Eddie Glaude Jr., the media, Are we the problem?
Well, we're part of it. I mean, look, the fourth estate is absolutely essential to the functioning of a healthy democracy. And when the fourth estate has been captured by, basic bottom line or corporate interests, or captured by kind of crossfire of those, right? That is, we just got to have the opinions of opposing sides, and that somehow constitutes objectivity, and not be engaged in an ongoing search for the truth and the facts of the matter that should inform how we develop our opinions, then the fourth estate can become a problem. And plus, we have to understand, I mentioned it, it's a kind of abstract formulation, but there's this fragmentation of ecosystems. People aren't getting their news just from mainstream media. They're getting it from online sources that are not necessarily sources that could be trustworthy. They're finding places that in some ways echo their prejudices and their assumptions. They're in like-minded spaces. So it becomes very difficult to acquire information, to engage in the kind of debate where you can be persuaded to think otherwise, right? And I think that's really important, because if citizens don't have the requisite information to engage in informed decision-making, then they can't engage in self-governance. Then that means democracy itself is in jeopardy. So not only do we have a gerrymandered House, not only do we have an undemocratic and broken Senate, not only do we have a captured Supreme Court, not only do we have an imperial presidency, we also have the very space, the public sphere, right, in so many ways affected by these dynamics impacting the very ways in which citizens engage each other. So we're at a crisis point in our democracy right now, and we need to ask ourselves some hard questions and look at ourselves honestly so that we can actually answer the question, how did we get here?